Hello everybody. This is the first video in a series that I'm going to be recording for the guys to watch. So on NTI, you can refer to this as many times as you need to in class. We'll be here so I can give you more instruction. But we can get you started. When you come into the studio, generally you're going to get clay out of a block of clay. At home, you have the 10 pounds of the Laverne, the white clay, and you have 5 pounds of Ranger, the red clay. This clay happens to be Bruiser. It's very similar to Ranger. It's an iron-bearing clay. It's going to give me darker colors when it bisques, and it's going to react differently to the glazes. So you have to determine right now, before you start, do I want to use white clay or do I want to use an iron-bearing clay? It really doesn't matter which one you use. You have both. Feel free to use them both. In the studio, if you come in and you have a block of clay, you want to get the scissors, you want to cut the zip tie off and throw the zip tie away. Open up the clay. In the studio, you'll be using wire cutters. We talked about this in the video on tools. You'll be using this to cut the clay. At home, you may not have a pair of wire cutters, but what you do have is dental floss. You can use any thin wire to cut with, it works. I like the dental floss, it gives me a nice clean cut. You can wrap this around pencils or just your fingers like you're traditionally using dental floss. I'm gonna cut about 2.5 inches down on the block and cut a large chunk of clay off. For this project, you're going to need 1.5 pounds, but we never want to cut a thin slab of clay. If you cut a thin slab and then you got to turn it into a ball of clay, you're going to be introducing a lot of air bubbles to the clay. We talked in class how air bubbles are detrimental to the construction. Air bubbles will expand in heat and will blow the side of your wall out. So don't cut thin slabs, cut chunks. When you're through cutting your clay, always seal the bag. I like to roll it like bread and then lay it down on so it will not open up. Air dries out clay. We don't want our clay to dry out, whether we're at home in the studio. Now I have a pair of scales here in the studio, and I'm going to drop that chunk of clay on there, and it weighs just at 6 pounds. So if I take that 6-pound piece of clay and I cut it in half, I now have approximately 3 pounds of clay. I cut that in half and I'm gonna have approximately 1.5 pounds of clay. That's what you need for your first pinch pot bowl is 1.5 pounds of clay. And it should be in a cube of clay. I'm going to convert this cube into a ball. The only other tools you're going to need for this project in the pinching part of it is what God gave us, our hands. You're going to use your hands to do this entire project. Keeping our hands cupped, I'm going to forcefully throw the clay into this hand, throw it back into that hand, rotating it while I do it to convert this into a ball of clay. It looks like this. And with just a few seconds, I can make this into a nice ball of clay. Now that I have a ball of clay, I'm going to start in the pinch process. This is called a pinch pot bowl. We're going to be pinching with our thumb and fingers in this motion. Keeping the clay in the palm of our hands with our hands cupped to keep it round, I will insert my thumb into the clay. I'm going to push my thumb towards the palm of my hand. You can feel your thumb getting close. You want to stop well before you go all the way through the bowl. Leave about 3/4 to 1/2 inch of clay at the bottom in the beginning. It's going to look like this. I push my thumb in and I can feel my thumb coming towards my palm and I stop. Now you have 1.5 pounds of clay on your thumb. When it's there, rotate it. You want this to freely move around your thumb. Now the pinch process. Pinching between my thumb and fingers, starting at what is the bottom of the bowl. This will be the opening to your bowl. This is the bottom. I'm going to pinch in a spiral, working from the top down to the lip. So I pinch and rotate, pinch and rotate. Now I've done this several times, more than I care to count. Go slow. It's not a race. You're not trying to get the walls really thin right now. You're trying to keep them in a consistent thickness. So I'm pinching them right now to about 1/2 inch thick walls. And I'm rotating and going from the bottom of the bowl to the top of the bowl. After one round, you can see how the bowl is starting to take its form. You can only take this clay so far. We talked about plastic clay. Right now, this is plastic clay. It's very soft. We have to be careful not to take it too far. If you start working on it and the walls won't support themselves and it wants to fold up, then stop. That's as far as you can take that clay in a day, because it is plastic and it's not going to hold its shape real well. If you get to that point, we are simply going to turn the bowl upside down and let it firm up for a little while. If you want to, feel free to start a second bowl, or a third bowl, or a fourth bowl, depending on where you are. In the studio, it's going to be real easy to do that. At home, you could just get to a certain point, stop, and then come back to it later. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. I'm going to do my second round of pinching right now. If I can't get my thumb to the bottom of the bowl and pinch, I'm still going to do that pinching technique, but this time I'm going to use my fingertips and the palm of that hand. I'm going to lay it in the palm, and I'm going to press my fingertips towards the palm, thinning out the bottom of the bowl. Generally, in the grading process, this is where I find points to deduct. Your bottoms are pretty heavy because you're not pinching the bottoms. Make sure you do this process and thin that bottom of the bowl out also. If you get to the point where I can reach now, I'm going to turn my bowl and I'm going to start going through the same process of thumb finger pinching. And I'm going to thumb finger pinch and rotate, again going thinner than the 1/4 inch or thinner than the 1/2 inch that it was. My finished thickness should be no thicker than 3/8 of an inch. And that's still pretty thick for a bowl. But if you shoot for 3/8 of an inch consistent walls, you're going to be in fine shape. You're going to have a large enough bowl to use for your particular uses. I'm almost back up to the top. This would be the second round of pinching. And you can see how large the bowl is getting now. The opening's widening up. If I want to get this wider, I can put my hand inside the bowl and just stretch my hand out, and I can push that wall out and get a wider opening. You got to the point now where the clay is really soft. It doesn't want to hold its shape anymore. And I'm going to use, if I'm in the studio, I'm going to use a piece of masonite board as my storage board. If I'm at home, I'm going to use any kind of scrap I have. It could be a piece of cardboard. This is a piece of foam core. I could use a lid to a bucket. It's a nice firm surface to use. If you use paper plates, which is fine also, depending on the thickness or density of that paper plate, you may have to stack 2, 3, 4 plates there. What you don't want to do is set your piece directly on the board. Wood, paper, plaster will all suck the moisture out of your clay, along with the air. If I set this out for any length of time, it would get too firm to work with. So when I go through the process of cleaning up and I'm done for the day, the other thing you're going to need is a piece of plastic. You can use shopping bags, dry cleaning bags, garbage bags. I don't want something that's going to be stiff. I want a softer piece of plastic. We have plastic here in the studio that you can use. I'm going to lay the plastic on top of my piece, and I'm going to wrap all the plastic inside the bowl, and I'm going to set it lip down. We set it lip down so it'll hold its shape. If I set it on its bottom, it's going to flatten the bottom out. And we don't want flat bottoms, we want round bottoms. Round bottoms are easier to get the food out of. Think about eating chips and salsa. If I have a round bottom, I can use that chip and I can scoop the last bit out. If it's my cereal, I can turn that bowl and I can get that spoon in there and get those last pieces of cereal. Or the ice cream, I can get that last bit of ice cream. Yes, everything is designed for our food. You're going to be designing a bowl for the foods you choose to eat. You're not making a bowl for me, you're making a bowl for you. So that's it for the day. We'll get the next video in when we get this started. Thank you, gentlemen.